All right, you guys. So, welcome to day one. We're just going to take a little journey through our mental toughness courses. Um, as you know, I am a very, very big believer in a couple of things. I might as well start by saying, number one is I really, really enjoy it when other people are successful, right? That is a big deal. And I also know what it takes to be successful, and it's a bit of a squeeze. You do need to achieve levels of pushing yourself that a lot of people can't, especially not consistently. They can do it for a week or two, and then you also have to learn a lot. Tennis is a very strange game. That look at the final this last weekend with Alcaraz Sinner. I mean, it looked like Sinner was firmly in control. And then when you look back, it's quite an easy victory for Alcaraz. So things can swing quickly. And if you take that too personally, and if you don't have the right set of tools to deal with it, it's going to be very hard to just kind of bounce back from those, right? So, yeah, what is this course all about? I mean, why the fundamentals, right? And the fundamentals are basically there because they are the things that you cannot be successful without, right? There just simply is no way. So let's go through this, right? So in your career, nothing is going to make a bigger difference to the overall story than the way you look at life, right? What you perceive as an opportunity, what you consider a hardship, what you think of yourself, what you think of your potential, what you consider to be pushing really hard compared to Nadal or Djokovic. So all of those thoughts, all of those things that make up your perspective have a huge part to play in the choices that you make, right? And those choices are ultimately going to lead you to where you're going to go, right? Okay, so your starting point mentally should be that you are undertaking a multi-year journey and you're going to build this thing over the course of 5 or 6 years. And there'll probably be lots of highs and lows in between. It doesn't matter because without developing a world-class mind, who cares if you win 5 orange balls? It's not going to work for you, right? Okay, so starting point one is to be like, I'm going to do this thing. I'm going to spend as much time as I need. I'm going to practice. I'm going to learn, and I'm going to try to master the fundamentals mentally, right? And I'm going to shift my focus to not worrying about what I currently have, right? If you knew you were going to win the lottery in 2 weeks' time, they called you and said, hey, you just got to wait 2 weeks to get the payout. How much would you worry about money this week? My guess is you wouldn't, right? Because you have that huge payoff coming in 2 weeks' time. So what difference does it make, right? Okay, so no matter what you currently have, no matter how high or how low your starting point is, right, you're going to start with a decision to end up, to become, to finish the project with really, really good mental skills. Okay, so that's the commitment you got to start with. And you got to say, right, there's probably a whole bunch of stuff that I don't know, that I'm not good at putting into practice yet, but I'm going to go and figure that all out, right? Okay, so once you make that firm, committed decision, and you say, right, I want to work on building myself up, and I want to acquire those tools that are going to help me to reach my goals, right? Once you have that internal decision made, now you still need to put together a plan, right? So you need to be like, well, how am I going to do it? It's great to say that I want to get to Harvard, but how am I going to get there? Am I going to get there with my coding skills? I'm going to get there doing science stuff as a doctor. I need to put together a roadmap. Okay, so just going through this again, What are the fundamentals? They are a whole group of skills that you cannot be successful without. So just think about oxygen. It's fundamental to humans. If you land on a planet without oxygen, you're not going to make it, right? So you have to have that ingredient or you're dead, okay? And so that's the purpose of this course. We're going to go over those in fairly high detail, right? And then we're going to get to work on implementing them and improving them every chance we get, right? And just remind yourself, put it in your notebook. These are must-haves. Without these, you might as well go hide under a rock. Okay, so he has a couple of examples, right? And you can tell me if you agree or not. So the first is your ability to play reasonably well under pressure, right? We've all seen a lot of top pros that are exceptional in this category. I think probably my favorite is Djokovic, just because he's been in so many of these situations and he has done remarkably well, right? Okay, the second one is your ability to problem solve. And these are examples on a list of about 30 things, right? So if you don't like problem solving, if you don't like encountering difficulty, if you don't like the puzzle and the challenge, you have to go work on that. You have to say, right, I've got to get over that piece that wants comfort, that doesn't want to be confronted with nightmares. And I want to get used to the idea of like being the go-to guy when there's a big problem. So you got to like, you'll feel it. You see a number one seed in a tournament that you're playing, and your first reaction is, oh, shikers, right? But that's a bad reaction because that's part of that system of like, I don't really want to play the number one. I'm scared of him. And it also means probably a very tough match or an early exit. But you got to flip the script. You got to be like, nope, this is exactly what I do it for. These are the challenges that I want. And this is what we're here for, right? So, I can't promise you I'm going to win. But what I can promise you is I'm going to compete extremely well. I'm going to try my absolute best to come up with some kind of answers that work. And if I don't get him, whatever the score is, 6-2, 6-2, I'm going to try and be 6-3, 6-4 next time, just a little bit better. And it might take me 5 or 6 times or a year of improvements to get to where I actually have a chance to win. I'm willing to do that work. That's not a problem for me, right? Okay, so all of those, if you don't have them, you got no chance, right? If you're a poor problem solver, you're dead, right? If you can't perform when it's pressure and the points count for a lot, you're going to have a hard time, right? If you don't develop a good work ethic, you are in real trouble because there's too many people who already have it and they put it to use every day, right? If you don't start to discipline your actions, your preparation, your thinking, what do I let myself think about and what am I just not going to go there, all right? And your pre and post analysis, right? You're going to have a very, very hard time kind of threading the needle as to what is the right thing to do, right? And fundamental to tennis is decision making, right? Once you're very, very fit and once your shots are, about as good as the next guy, it then comes down to, I always say it's like chess. It's like in chess, they give everyone the same pieces, right? In tennis, you play a lot of matches where the pieces are different. Your forehand's better than his fitness is better than yours. But as you get towards 18, the differences are much, much smaller, right? And then what ends up being the biggest differentiator is how well you use your game, right? And how well you've learned to tolerate those difficult situations, right? How much you can trust yourself, etc., right? Okay, so from that first put, we extrapolate. If you want to be successful, you have to plan somehow to learn how to be effective when it's very stressful, right? You have to work on being an excellent problem solver. So you got to go towards problems, don't go away from them, right? You have to keep pushing yourself to develop your work ethic, right? Until, you should be the hardest working person in your environment. unless you have 3 top 10s. If you take the number 1 from Scottsdale and the number 1 from Cave Creek and the number 1 from Mesa and the number 1 from Tucson, you've already got like 30 people. And that's just in a 100-mile radius that are hard workers, right? So, try to aim for being top 5 in the country, hard work. That's an achievement, right? Okay, sitting around hoping it's going to happen never works. It's never worked for anyone trying to become a doctor. It's never worked for anyone trying to climb Everest. You have to go and do the thing, right? And so you're going to have to learn how to learn too, right? And we'll dig into this a bit later. But one of the big things there is, parents often think you are ready quite a few years before you are, right? And that'll come with some pressure. That'll come with some expectation. But at the end of the day, it's a little bit like the doctor getting yelled at, why did this person have to have a C-section? You're an idiot. And it's like, well, no, it's not my fault, right? So what you want to work on is like, try not to worry. I like to think of it like school, right? You don't get paid until you have your PhD and you walk into Microsoft, right? What you do before then is not that big of a deal. If you happen to get a B on a test or you end up, forgetting something or whatever, it's not going to hurt you and it's not going to cost you any money. So these are the years where you should take losses, right? And you should be working on trying a number of different things, and you should be building that callus in your brain that really only worries about 2 things. Number 1, am I working my butt off? And number 2, am I competing as hard as I can, right? And then I suppose number 3, you could say, am I growing as well, right? So here's a question for you. Think about it and say, all right, where am I going, right? I'm currently doing X habit and eating X thing and making X decision. And if I continue with that path, those habits, those disciplines, where am I going to end up in 5 years' time, right? If the answer is I'm on track to hit my goals, I'm excited, I feel good, perfect, right? If the answer is, I don't know, this looks like I could fall short a little bit, then you got to make some changes, right? You got to look at data in the eye and say, listen, this is it. The softness wins, and the staying the same wins, or my dream wins. I give myself a shot at doing something really, really cool and something that I like to think about. I enjoy the process. So what's it going to be? And everybody's got to make that decision for themselves, right? Okay, so to wrap up today's mini lesson, the first 2 fundamentals that you need to have, right, that are going to form the anchor point. Just think of your computer. Your one has Windows, the other one has iOS. Fundamentally, they start off differently, right? The coding's different, how the software interacts is different, because there's a fundamental difference right at the beginning. Okay, so I want you guys to think about this, and I want you to say, right, my mission statement in life, and it goes beyond tennis. This is something hopefully you'll take with you for many, many years past your tennis career, is to look for, identify, and then get to work on fixing your mistakes, right? Always. How can I refine this? How can I make it a little bit better, a little bit stronger, a little bit more reliable? So you want to put your mind out there in that place of I wonder if there's room for just a little bit more, right? The second one is updating and refining your philosophy. Now, what is your philosophy? It's not a bad place to start. And at the end of the day, your philosophy is basically the collection of your knowledge, so your actual facts sitting in your brain, and then the way you interpret those, and it creates feelings inside of you, right? So, the fact might be that your dad's a millionaire, and then you might feel like, wow, that's unfortunate for me because I am not going to get the same challenges as other people. That would be a way of looking at it, right? And everybody looks at their situation differently. But what you really want is just a very solid, stable, critical thinking brain that doesn't have too many crazy highs and lows. And it's always updating, it's always looking for that next piece of information. Okay, so most folks are afraid to admit that they make mistakes. Most folks are angry and sad and upset when they make mistakes. And I think a lot of people, you can't believe how many people think that with 2,000 hours of training, they can make the same decisions as somebody that has 10,000 hours. But that is an absolute cardinal sin. And I see it all the time. People are hitting shots that are very difficult to make. And you can make them, but you need to have practiced an enormous amount. And if you haven't, you're just going to end up missing, right? Okay, so what you don't know can and will hurt you, right? We've seen over the course of history that, things like the bubonic plague and whatever else have killed a lot of people, the common flu, and, we didn't have an answer to it back then. But fast forward till now, and we've got a very good answer to it, and you have to be very unlucky if that thing gets you, right? Okay, so your philosophy, the accumulation of your knowledge on a subject. Knowledge does not fall off trees and land magically in your head. You have to seek it out. You got to go to seminars, you got to watch the videos, you got to make the plan, you got to take the classes, you got to read the books, you got to do the analysis afterwards. You've got to study in order to improve that piece of yourself. Okay, so just tell yourself, one of the things I want to show off, it's not my Gucci bag, it's not my whatever, it's my library. It's the work that I've done with the ambition of tapping into my intelligence and filling that engine with really good fuel, food for your brain, so that now what's churning in there is some of the best ideas that are available. Okay. And you want to bring that into your matches. You want to say, all right, this match has to be handled a little bit differently than the last time, right? Excuse me, guys. And I think that's important. I think it's very important to just be honest with yourself. We're not the same. Nobody's the same. You will have different weaknesses. You will have different strengths. You will have different ways of reasoning on the scales. But what matters for each and every one of you individually is that you learn how to work with yourself, right? In order to go after some cool things. Because, you see a lot of people that haven't chased a big goal for years and years and years. They tried, they failed, and then they've just made the decision, I'll probably never get it anyway. And now they just sit on the sidelines, right? And that can happen to you if you don't start with a thing of like, I don't know where and when I'm going to get to certain milestones, right? I don't know what my pace of development will be, so I'm not going to worry if somebody gets to somewhere ahead of me. My job is to stay consistent, is to every day try to fix my mistakes, refine my philosophy, refine my work ethic, and build, right? And as long as you're laying a couple of bricks every single day, you'll come back and you'll see a well-developed wall after a couple of years, right? Okay, so that's number one, done and dusted. And we'll see you back here for number two. All right, cheers, guys. Bye.